Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer. And allergies are killing me, but I'm here, and it is Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And I'm joined this week by Courtney from Fiction Fixation Podcast. Courtney, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And this kind of came out of my Lost in the Wasteland interview with Courtney and how we got our hopes up about a Tim Burton version of The Prestige. And we're like, well,
hmm
now we're going to talk about it. So I guess, Courtney, what are some of your thoughts on like what would this Tim Burton version of this film look like and how it might be different?
Okay, so I'm thinking it's gonna give Sweeney Todd vibes.
Mhm.
Okay, that's my original thing. I feel like it's going to utilize a lot of Sweeney Todd vibes here. It's going to be a little bit darker. It's going to feel like a fever dream. I mean, The Prestige already sort of feels like a fever dream, but this is going to be like a NyQuil fever dream, you know?
It's a little bit more than just like screwing with your mind. It's screwing with your
hmm
mind, and you're also looking at something that's like dark and ominous and strange.
hmm
And I definitely get the Sweeney Todd vibes because it has that kind of time period that we're kind of going
Yeah.
for in terms of that. And anytime we have any of those like city scenes, it's going to be like gross and disgusting. And like, wow, I wouldn't want to live here, especially because,
Yeah.
Sweeney Todd, there's a barber slitting people's throats and
Yeah.
human meat pies. But like, I definitely get that
Just
kind
fun
of
things.
vibe. Yeah, because like, obviously, like early 90s, Tim Burton's a lot of like exaggerated, like German expressionist looking type
hmm
setups. But like, it does make a lot of sense that you would have like a similar kind of feel to Sweeney Todd, seeing as that
hmm
would probably be the most equitable to the actual setting for
hmm
the prestige. And, it would just look disgusting and gross. And you're just like, these two magicians are basically like fighting to not be in this disgusting existence.
Yeah. I and while The Prestige is not like a disgusting, gory movie like Sweeney Todd is, I feel like the sort of underbelly of London there is definitely the vibe we're going for.
Absolutely. And I just had a thought in my mind too, because you have Angier's character who goes off to like Colorado or yeah,
hmm
right, where Tesla is. And now I'm just imagining like all those woods and mountains being like Sleepy Hollow. It's like
hmm
you leave like Sweeney Todd type cityscape, and then you're just like, well, now this is really creepy and weird.
Yeah, well, I don't think we've ever seen a Tim Burton movie that sort of has like a more Western landscape.
Mhm.
And I honestly feel like that would be like the starkness of a Western landscape would be even more eerie than like haunted woods.
That's also an interesting thought of just like you're out in the middle of nowhere, just creepy David Bowie type,
Yeah.
doing weird science stuff. So, and then obviously, like one of the most ominous shots in the original Prestige is like the whole light bulb thing, and you're
hmm
just out in the middle of the woods, and then also, all the top hats, and you're just like,
hmm
that would just look even creepier if Tim Burton's doing it.
Well, Tim Burton top hats are a character of their own.
Very true.
Um, they are paid actors. And so bringing those in is just changing the vibe altogether. But also, I think another scene is this scene haunts me to this day, and
Mm.
it's the tanks. It's the tanks. And the scene in the original Christopher Nolan film was already eerie and surreal and just like it, it like changed part of my DNA. It's a core memory.
Yeah,
And I feel like adding a Tim Burton feel to that um would be even worse because Tim Burton's going to make them have facial expressions in the tanks. The water's going to be different colors. They're going to be posed in like grotesque, weird poses. They're going to be in different, like, or like different stages of like decay. There's gonna be little chunks of flesh in the water. It would be. I honestly feel like Tim Burton directing this movie might push a rating. Like we're gonna have to have different trigger warnings on this movie.
That's a very interesting thought too, because like I'm just imagining like dead people in a Tim Burton movie have very obvious like person makeup, and then just
Mm-hmm.
seeing it just versions of the same actor just like grotesquely decaying in all those tubs
Mm-hmm.
would be like, yeah, that's like pushing. This might have to be R at this point,
Yeah.
and Tim Burton would go there.
Yeah. And you know what? I would pay good money to see it. If you're listening to Tim Burton, I would pay good money to see that.
Like we know you're busy with Wednesday and Beetlejuice, but there is room to do this too. So there you go. Now,
And
I
you know what?
guess
I love that he's busy with Wednesday because that means that we can add Wednesday in to our character list.
which that's a wonderful segue into thinking about casting this film. And I guess an important thing is, did you have a particular like time period in Tim Burton's career you kind of had in your head when you were casting?
I don't think Tim Burton has a bad time period. Like
Oh,
there's
that's
no
fair.
like Tim Burton was better then or I love Tim Burton's newer stuff. There's no good stuff. So somewhere between if I had to pick somewhere between Edward Scissorhands and Sweeney Todd.
Hmm. I guess I was asking more from like actor perspective in terms of like,
Oh.
because obviously this is a what if scenario. We could just make up whatever we want in terms of like,
Mhm.
we want this actor at this age, even though it doesn't match the other people.
Oh, you know what? I feel like since this is never going to happen and we are
Just have fun
getting our
with it.
hopes up for nothing, I honestly feel like we can pick and choose whatever we want.
There you
We
go.
could have Edward Scissorhand age Johnny Depp, and we could have modern day Helena Bonham Carter. It doesn't matter.
That's a fair point because, this is all what if scenarios. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess let's start with our two leads. So we have Borden and we have Angier. So who did you have in mind for Borden to replace Christian Bale?
It's gonna have to be Johnny Depp.
Yeah, I feel like that's like the ideal place to put Johnny Depp in this movie, especially for those who haven't seen The Prestige. Spoiler alert, but like the fact that like Christian Bale was done up in makeup right next to himself throughout the whole entire movie, that would totally
Mm-hmm.
be something you could do with Johnny Depp. Because,
Mm-hmm.
he's literally done that in multiple movies where it's just like, wait a minute, that was Johnny Depp under like tons of makeup.
Yeah, I think that Christian Bale's character would have to be Johnny Depp. Like
Yep.
that, I feel like that's the most logical place to put him. And I also feel like there's no other character here that Johnny Depp would really like play, you know? Like,
Yeah,
and especially
it's
when we're talking about tone wise,
mm,
Johnny Depp playing Christian Bale's character is it's going with the theme.
yep. Well, and I guess like if you wanted like an older Johnny Depp, I guess the closest thing could be like he could be Tesla and like be
Yeah.
that like weird random quirky character that just pops up, because somehow
Mm-hmm.
Christopher Nolan got David Bowie to just randomly pop up in his movie. But no, I definitely agree with Borden. Who did you have in mind for Angier to replace Hugh Jackman?
I hate to say it, but Christian Bale is a little bit easier to replace than Hugh Jackman. Um, I don't have a good replacement for Hugh Jackman. Can we not just keep Hugh Jackman? um,
That's
okay.
perfectly fine if you do want to keep Hugh Jackman. I guess the two ideas that I had in mind was like it would change the dynamic, but like if you had somebody like Michael Keaton as Angier,
Okay.
who definitely could have like that vicious, jealous streak, then I feel like that would be
Mm-hmm.
an interesting dynamic. Being like early '90s Johnny Depp and Michael Keaton were
Mm-hmm.
basically leading all of Tim Burton's movies.
No, no, I can feel it. I can feel it. I think that would be. No, I like it. I like it.
Like I had that idea, and then if you wanted them to be a little bit closer, I was thinking like I love the work that Ewan McGregor did in Big Fish, and just imagining like he could possibly, who's like, he has that, he can do like the musical aspect of like the showmanship that Hugh Jackman
Mm-hmm.
brings to the role too. I probably would go with Keaton because I really like that idea of the like their
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. And like Hugh Jackman's progression in the film's a little bit more like he's pushing himself over the edge throughout this film.
Yeah.
I feel like Michael Keaton version of Angier would always have like this little like little sense of menace throughout the whole thing.
Yes, sinister.
And that would make it like, damn, he
Michael
100% would
Keaton
go there.
always has a sinister feel to him.
He just has something like sitting there underneath, like at the Oscars, where he was just sitting
Hmm.
there and Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger called him out. And he just like turned it on him like, he's got
He
this.
just he didn't even smile. It was like a smirk. Like
It
I
was like that Batman scowl. I'm just like, he's back.
I felt like we were all in trouble.
Yeah. Like that shot was menacing at the Oscars. I'm like, oh, what did Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger do?
You know what? No, I agree. Michael Keaton would be a really good there. Even though I do love Hugh Jackman.
Mm.
I do love Hugh Jackman. Um, and I think if I had to pick who did the best in the role here, I think Hugh Jackman did amazing. But I think Michael replacing him with Michael Keaton for Tim Burton would definitely be a smart choice.
I think it would definitely be a really interesting choice. Now, before we get into the three female characters from the film,
Hmm.
we have Cutter, we have Michael Caine.
Hmm.
So you have Christopher Nolan's Lucky Charm, who keeps popping and everything. So who did you have in mind for this mentor character?
Okay, so it's not a stereotypical um it's not a stereotypical Christopher Nolan like casting, okay? But hold on one second. What on my notes are Michael Gambon.
That's a great choice because that work that he did in like Sleepy Hollow, and he he was one of my thoughts. I have a very like meta casting choice based off of
Hmm.
Michael Caine, but like Michael Gambon is was such a talented actor. Sad, I have to say, was
I know.
at this point,
R.I.P.
and I feel like he just brings a level of heft to any role that he has. He just has that voice. Um,
Yes.
and also that kind of attitude where like he'll bring whatever he wants to the role,
Hmm.
with Harry Potter, where at this point, notoriously, book says, as Dumbledore whispered to Harry, "Did you put your name in the Goblet of Fire?" And he's just like, "No, I'm gonna yell at this teenager." Um, like bringing that kind of energy to the role. I think that would be an
Yeah.
interesting choice.
You know who also I don't think would be a bad choice is
Mm,
Anthony Stewart Head. Um,
I do
I feel
like
like
that idea too.
he'd bring a really good vibe.
Hmm.
Just like I mean, he was Giles in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so he
Yeah.
definitely. I feel like when I see him, no matter the like role he's in, like he was in Repo the Genetic Opera, and he was not a mentor in that movie. But I'm still like Giles, no. Um, I
Which
think he has the vibe.
he was cast in Sweeney Todd, him and Christopher
Was
Lee,
he?
and they both were cut. It's like they wound up not including any of the like group songs that are from like the actual musical, and they were both supposed to be in it, Christopher Lee um and Anthony Michael Head, and like I kind of wish that he was in it. Like I kind of wish I saw like those parts of the movie. Director's cut. I don't know if they still actually shot anything, but I like that choice a lot too. the choice that I had in mind is because, you have Michael Caine who plays Alfred in Christopher Nolan's
Mhm.
Batman trilogy. I had Michael Gough, who played Alfred in
Okay.
Tim Burton's movies. And I'm like, that would be an interesting choice because not only like he was a talented actor, but like also there's like that meta level of like, well, you had your Alfred, I have mine. And it would
Yeah.
be an interesting choice to go with.
No, I love things. I love when actors who have played together in other movies
Mhm.
are cast together in another film that's completely unrelated. And so you're playing a mind game with yourself the whole movie, to be like not the same. Like Leo and Kate were in Titanic together, and then Leo and Kate were also in Revolutionary Road together.
It's just like,
Different vibes.
yes. It's like
And the whole
I
thing, I'm like, this is not a sequel. This is not a sequel.
no, no, and this is not the same kind of relationship going on here.
Mm-mm.
Well, and I think it would be interesting too because you have to look at Tim Burton's Bruce Wayne and Alfred have this falling out by the end of the Prestige, and it's just like I feel like that would hit in a really interesting way. Now we
Well,
have
because Alfred is a saint.
yes,
So, like, I honestly, like, no one can convince me that Alfred is not a saint. It doesn't matter the Alfred. Alfred is a saint.
like no matter what he did as a soldier in his past life, he is Alfred the butler and everything else to Bruce Wayne, and we love him for it.
Yes.
Now we have three female characters in this film.
Hmm.
So you have Sarah, who is Borden's wife, played by Rebecca Hall. We have Olivia,
Hmm.
Scarlett Johansson's character, who's like kind of in the middle between these
Hmm.
two men, and Piper Parabo's character Julia, who was in the film earlier, not in it much, but her death in the film is a really big triggering part to this whole story.
Yes.
Let's so let's rip this band-aid off. Who did you have Helena Bonham Carter playing in this movie? Because it's Tim
Sarah.
Burton. Yep. Because like you have to put her with Johnny Depp. Like
Yeah.
that has to be it. So and it would be interesting because it's more of a tragic role.
Hmm.
Because like that's a sad turn of events where this character winds up going. And that's one of the most twisted things in this movie is that revelation of like what her marriage really was. And that would be interesting seeing Helena Bonham Carter having to play that out on screen.
It breaks my heart the way Sarah describes how hot and cold he is sometimes. Like some days I feel like you love me, and some days I feel like you can't stand to be around me. And it's because you can't.
Because
And
yes.
and it's just one of those things to where like I feel so bad for her
Mm,
because like she thinks she's going crazy.
yeah.
Like it's she breaks my heart through this whole movie and I want to give her a hug.
Yeah. That she's one of the most tragic characters in this movie because like there's a lot of characters in this movie that bring their own shit upon themselves. Like that's the two
Mm-hmm.
leads. Like they caused all this crap with each other. And like they both have their downfalls in some shape or form, but like you brought this upon yourselves. He did not deserve that. And it's really messed up. And that would be interesting to see her perform that. How about Olivia? So replacing Scarlett Johansson.
She's my hardest. And I
Mm,
don't know why she's my hardest because I really kind of had a connection to Olivia in this
yep.
movie. So like I like attached Scarlett Johansson. Like honestly, like when anybody asks me of a Scarlett Johansson movie, I'm like The Prestige, and they're like
What?
weird, but okay. Out of all of the movies, like that's the one. Um, and so like I don't. She's my hardest.
Mm.
Um, hold on, I'm pulling up my notes. Who did you have in mind?
So especially because she's a character that kind of gets played in between the two of them.
Hmm.
And there has to be some kind of level of seduction and like that play with people. I immediately went to Michelle Pfeiffer because of Batman Returns.
Okay.
And I just feel like there would at least it would be leaning much more into like that seductive kind of element that she plays on with the two men. Like, I think, especially with a lot of my other casting kind of like fitting in that time period, I think she would be really interesting. And that would make well, into what you said earlier in terms of like seeing these different actors in these different contexts and like her with Michael Keaton. And then it would be interesting with her with like this younger Johnny Depp character. So that's who I had.
So, okay, it's a little wild, but hear me out.
Mhm.
Like 1980s Catherine O'Hara. So I feel like she has sort of like the whimsical vibe, but also like she does have sort of that seductive vibe. And I don't know, maybe it's because they're both blonde. Maybe it's just because they're both blonde. I don't know. But I feel like I really like Catherine O'Hara for that. I also really like Catherine O'Hara. She is one of my
He's great.
favorites. Um, and so I feel like she would be a really good actress there. And again, I'm biased here, but I think Kate Winslet would be a great actress there. But they don't fit the Tim Burton vibe. Neither one of them fit the Tim Burton vibe at all.
Well,
Well, maybe Catherine
Catherine,
O'Hara.
Catherine O'Hara has been in like multiple Tim Burton movies in
She
terms
has,
of
but like not in the context of like Olivia,
yeah.
you know?
Well, and I'm trying to think like how many Tim Burton movies have a character like that, to be honest. Because like I feel trying to think of like the female characters in Tim Burton movies, a lot of them are either like completely innocent or dangerous. And there's not like a whole
Yeah.
lot of like that in between. But that's Catherine O'Hara is always an interesting choice because like she's such a talented actress. Obviously, if you haven't watched Schitt's Creek, what are you doing? Uh,
Love it. How do you
Moira.
feel about Winona Ryder?
That's the thing. I was trying to think. I feel like she has to be in this movie. And I was kind of with her towards Piper Parabo's character, Julia. Except after I cast Michael Keaton, and I'm like, I don't like, I don't know if I want to go that far in terms of like, at that point, he's probably like twice her age. But like, I feel like out of all the characters, Winona Ryder would make the most sense to me, at least for Julia, that character. I guess, I just you have to get past the creepy casting along with Michael
Well,
Keaton
see,
potentially.
if this is the fever dream that it is, we can have younger Michael Keaton.
Mhm. This could be 80s Michael Keaton and not quite 90s Michael Keaton, where he's definitely into his 30s at this point. So there
See,
you go.
I think I like Winona Ryder better for Olivia.
It would be an interesting choice too, and it would also make a lot of sense because Olivia is one of the leads of the film. Like,
Hmm.
I feel like she needs a lot more credit than just being like the third wheel to our two asshole magicians here. Because like she's an
Hmm.
integral part, and it would make a lot of sense. Um, Especially like Tim Burton, like Winona Ryder was a big part of quite a few of his films. So makes a lot of sense to me.
I like Jenna Ortega for Julia's character.
There you go. And that's the thing too, because like at this point, like if Tim Burton was making something now, like Jenna Ortega is definitely going to be in it. So that
Yeah,
makes a
he's her
lot of
new
sense to me. Mhm.
she's his new it girl.
Yep. Between Wednesday and now with the new Beetlejuice movie, it all makes sense. Um, and then I kind of only had two more characters to throw out here if we want to cast Tesla and Allie, who's Andy Serkis's character. I know for Tesla, for me, I kind of like I had to go with Christopher Lee because like any
Okay.
kind of just like small role in any Tim Burton movie where it's just like need to throw like some heft there, throw Christopher Lee in there. That would be a very interesting, like, he's also like mysterious and can be.
Hmm.
And I feel like that would be an interesting casting for it.
So uh, David Bowie played Tesla in the original one, and obviously, David Bowie's no longer with us.
Yeah.
But I think Adam Lambert just showing up mid-film, like as
It fit the
Tesla,
vibe.
it would fit the vibe. It's one of those things to where it's like goth David Bowie. Like, okay. And I feel like goth David Bowie is really what we're going for here for Tim
Yeah.
Burton's remake of The Prestige.
I can't argue with that. That would be a that would be a very interesting choice, but I think make it work. It would definitely be it's the thing. Like, who went for the prestige and was waiting for like, oh, Nikolai Tesla's gonna pop. I'm like, David Bowie? And just like him popping up in a Christopher Nolan movie of all things.
Well,
So
the Christopher Nolan, he was like, I need somebody eccentric and maybe clinically insane. And the casting director said, say less.
it's just like, well, yeah, there you go. What else do you want?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of somebody because like he's the least, I guess, the least important character to cast out of everybody we talked about, who's like David Bowie's right hand man. But did you have an idea for that
For
character?
who?
For Allie, Andy Serkis's character?
Mm, I don't know. Okay. So, well, it depends on who our David Bowie is. You know, who is our Tesla? Because I feel like that's going
So
to change the vibe there.
I guess for you, who would be helping out Adam Lambert?
Who's helping out Adam Lambert? Let's.
While you're
I'm trying to find a
pondering,
good sidekick for Adam Lambert.
so I just had a thought, and it's Danny DeVito.
Okay, so Danny DeVito was an initial gut reaction for me. And I honestly like Danny DeVito in a lot of roles like that. Like, how do you say no?
Well, and he won't be playing a ringmaster of a circus this time, which he's played how many times in a Tim Burton movie. Um, it just popped in my head. I'm like, I'm basically just passing this whole movie out of Batman Returns at this point. But like, you know,
Yes.
I feel like he would be an interesting choice, and I want him to play it straight. Like, there's no like
Yeah.
goofing around. Well, that's the thing. Circus kind of has a little bit of fun with it, more like sarcastic and stuff like that. And then it also made me had another thought, like, what if I had Christopher Walken play Nikolai Tesla? But he specifically has to have the hair that he had from Batman Returns. There's like
I
all
can't
this
argue
white.
with that either. But hear me out for
Yes,
Ali, Jeff Goldblum.
you can't go wrong with Jeff Goldblum. Every movie would be better with some Jeff Goldblum.
Right? Like I feel like Jeff Goldblum would bring a little bit of like one, like he's kind of quirky, but
Yes.
also like I feel like you have okay, so you have Adam Lambert as Tesla,
Mhm.
okay, this mad scientist in the woods, and then you have Jeff Goldblum, who's just like, mm, should we be out here? Like maybe we should go indoors. And Adam Lambert's like, absolutely not. And then he's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I guess I'm staying out here with you. And it's just raining. So you just have Jeff Goldblum standing there in the rain. Like, I feel like it's one of those things to where like he gives like some prestige, but also some quirk. Um,
Well, it's that kind of thing where it's like I just rewatched Grand Budapest Hotel last night, and 90% of his role is just reading exposition, but it's Jeff Goldblum. So like it's great. So
you know, Jeff Goldblum can read my autobiography. Like he can narrate it for me.
Now that just makes me want to try to see if he has any audiobooks. And I'm like, I don't even care what the book is. I just want to listen
Mhm.
to Jeff Goldblum read me a story.
He has a really nice voice.
Yes, absolutely.
You know who might also be a really funny Tesla? He's not an actor, he's another
Uh,
director. Another Jeff Goldblum, who would be a really funny Tesla to just show up in the
uh,
middle of a movie is Steven Spielberg. Just he has mad scientist vibes. So just Steven Spielberg showing up in a Tim Burton movie as a mad scientist just feels like, am I alive? What is that?
I'll one up you here. So I'm imagining Steven Spielberg as Allie, who brings him out into the middle of woods to reveal like George Lucas, just randomly being out in the woods doing mad scientist things. And he's just like, oh, so we transport things here. Um,
Yeah. And
or
then
as Skywalker Ranch.
and then James and then James Cameron as Cutter.
We just recast the whole entire movie as a whole bunch of directors. Oh, I'm just
Well,
imagining like,
James Cameron's kind of a mad scientist too, to be
he
honest.
is an actual mad scientist. Like he's an actual inventor. So like
Yeah.
I feel like James Cameron might actually be a good casting for Tesla. And James Cameron probably thinks he's Tesla.
Well, James
So,
Cameron doesn't look like a mad scientist.
you know what's hilarious? Did you see Alita Battle Angel?
Mm-mm.
At the very end, they reveal like the big bad of this whole universe. And I'm like, did
Uh-huh.
James Cameron get Robert Rodriguez to cast himself in this damn movie? Because it looked just like James Cameron, but it turned out to be Edward Norton dressed up like James, look like James Cameron. I'm just like, oh,
Okay.
I feel like also I think Edward Norton would be an interesting choice anywhere in this movie.
I think Edward Norton would be good for Hugh Jackman's character.
I would want to punch him even more. By
Yeah.
the end.
Okay, well listen, Hugh Jackman does not have a punchable face. I know a lot of people think he
Well,
does.
that's what makes it so interesting is like this guy keeps doing all these horrible things, but and I hate him. It's like why the greatest showman works. P.T. Barnum's a piece of crap, but it's Hugh Jackman.
Hugh
It's
Jackman.
Hugh
But apparently,
Jackman.
like Hugh Jackman's like the nicest guy in the world. And so the fact that he plays like some of the asshole characters, it's like, what?
He's a great actor. There you go. Well, before
Oh,
we
I
go
love it.
too much off the rails here, we had some fun there at the extra fun there at the end. But Courtney, this was a lot of fun. Thank you for coming on and
Yes.
coming up with this fever dream prestige by Tim Burton that maybe we could get to be made happen. Any means necessary.
I'll write a letter.
It'll
I'll
start
write
there.
500 of them.
You'll write 365 days.
You know what? It's going to be hard to ignore me when you get a letter from me every single day.
There you go.
And then I'm just going to get a cease and desist.
It's the one letter that you'll
You know, getting a cease and desist from Tim Burton would actually be the highlight of my life.
get. It'd certainly be something you can brag to people. It's just like, how many of you have had this ever happen to you? So
Yeah.
there you go. Well, when this actually happens, you all know where this started. So, and if Tim Burton, you're watching this random YouTube video on this random YouTube channel, make it happen. Courtney, thank you so much for
Please,
coming
please
on.
make it happen. Thanks for having me on. It was a great time.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.